Emma's fingers trembled as she held the phone to her ear, her breath shallow and feverish, each inhale stinging her chest like ice against fire. The sterile white light of the hospital room blurred in her vision, but not from the overhead fluorescence. It was the weight in her heart, the unbearable thought that this moment, this chance, was slipping through her fingers. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse and fading. "I truly want to come. I've prepared everything, but The voice on the other end cut in sharply, devoid of emotion. "We do not reschedule interviews, Miss Collins. If you are not present at the designated time, your application will be disqualified. Thank you." Then came the click. Silence. The line was dead. Emma let the phone drop onto the stiff hospital sheets. Her arm fell limp at her side as if the last thread holding her together had snapped. She turned her head toward the window where pale morning light slanted through the blinds, casting fragile stripes across the floor. The room was too quiet, save for the soft beeping of machines. In that silence, tears slid down her cheeks without sound or ceremony. She reached for the worn leather bag tucked beside her, the one she had clutched so tightly on her way to the hospital. Her fingers, shaken from fever and despair, unzipped it and pulled out the folder inside a crisp, neatly organized resume inside a plastic sleeve. On the top was a tiny note she had written to herself the night before. "This is the start of something better." She read it once, then twice, the words blurring as tears welled up again. She wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for the little girl sitting quietly in the corner chair. Mila, 4 years old, sat with her legs swinging above the floor, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her hair, the color of golden wheat, was clipped back with a tiny red pin. Her wide blue eyes watched everything silently. She had seen her mother miss meals. She had seen her patch up her shoes with tape. She had seen her cry in the kitchen after getting rejection letters. And now she watched as Emma cried in a hospital bed. But Mila didn't say anything. She simply sat, solemn and still, her small body holding the kind of calm that only children who grow up too fast carry. When Emma finally drifted into a fevered sleep, Mila stood. She padded quietly to her mother's side, reached up and brushed a strand of damp hair off her forehead. Then she turned to the bag. She opened it gently and pulled out the resume folder, hugging it to her chest. After a pause, she tiptoed over to the coat rack and retrieved her favorite pink dress, the one with the little white bows on the shoulders. She slipped it on, tucked the folder under her arm, and walked out of the room without a sound. No one noticed the little girl walking down the hospital hallway. No nurse stopped her. No visitor questioned her. She walked past the vending machines, past the waiting room, out through the automatic doors and into the chill of the early city morning. Wind brushed her cheeks, but she didn't shiver. She had seen the building before the one on the brochure her mom taped to the fridge. She knew the bus number. She knew the logo. She had watched her mom rehearse every answer in front of the mirror. Mila walked with purpose, clutching the folder like it held a spell, like it could change everything. 40 minutes later, she stood in front of a towering glass building in downtown Philadelphia. The letters above the entry read Weston Dynamics. She took a deep breath and walked through the heavy revolving door. The reception area buzzed with polished shoes clicking on marble, phones ringing, elevator chimes, and low murmurs of corporate urgency. Behind the desk, a woman in a blazer page was flipping through a digital schedule of morning interviews when a small shadow stretched across her desk. She looked up and blinked. Standing there, barely tall enough to reach the counter, was a little girl in a pink dress. Her white socks were slightly rumpled, her shoes scuffed but clean. She held a folder half her size and looked up with solemn determination. "Sweetheart," Paige said slowly, "are you lost?" Mila shook her head. "I'm here for the job interview," she said calmly. Paige blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The job interview," Mila repeated, holding up the folder. "It's for my mom. She's sick today, so I came instead." Silence fell around the lobby. A couple of passing employees slowed their steps. One man stopped mid-sip of his coffee. Paige stared, then quickly glanced down at her screen. "What's your mom's name, sweetheart?" "Emma Collins." Paige found the name. Emma Collins. Scheduled for 9 o'clock a.m. It was 8:57. She pressed her earpiece. "Landon, can you inform Mr. Weston that someone's here for the Collins interview? Just tell him it's urgent and unexpected." Upstairs, in a sleek corner office that overlooked the skyline, Graham Weston was adjusting his cufflinks. 32 years old, impeccably dressed, cold as the marble under his feet. His assistant appeared in the doorway, uncharacteristically smiling. "You'll want to take this one in person." Graham arched an eyebrow. "Let me guess, Stanford grad with 6 years at Tesla?" "Not quite. Just come down." He sighed, adjusted his tie, and stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened, he froze. There, in the middle of the lobby, was a tiny girl in a pink dress, standing like she owned the place. "Are you Mr. Weston?" she asked brightly. "I am," he replied, stunned. "Good," Mila said, walking up to him. "I brought my mom's paper. She's really smart and sick, but she really wants this job. She deserves it." She handed him the folder with both hands. The corner was bent. There was a faint juice stain. But Graham took it like it was a golden briefcase. The room had gone still. For a moment, he just looked at her. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Clear my schedule," he told Paige without looking away from Mila. "Sir?" "I'm conducting an interview." He turned to Mila and gestured to the hall. "Shall we?" Mila nodded. In the glass-walled conference room, Graham pulled out a chair. Mila climbed up, small hands on the edge of the table. He sat across from her and opened the folder. "So," he said carefully, "tell me why your mom wants to work here." Mila rested her hands on the table, serious. "Because she's really tired of cleaning and waiting tables. She went to college, but she had me. And she never got to finish, but she's really smart. She fixes things with spoons and duct tape. She helps people, and she always puts me first." Graham blinked. "And why did you come today?" Mila tilted her head. "Because Mama cried. She never cries, but today she did. And I thought maybe I could help." Graham leaned back, the folder still open. The resume in front of him wasn't extraordinary on paper, but suddenly it was extraordinary. "Well then," he said softly, "let's begin the interview." And the girl in the pink dress smiled. The waiting room outside Graham Weston's office had never felt so quiet. As Mila's tiny form disappeared behind the sleek conference door, the receptionist Paige simply stood behind her desk, lips parted slightly in disbelief. On the security monitor nearby, a guard leaned forward, watching the surreal image of a child and a CEO settling into an interview room as if this were business as usual. But for Graham, nothing about this was usual. Inside, he sat opposite Mila, the folder resting open between them. Though his fingers touched the paper, his eyes kept returning to hers, blue like the sky before a storm, clear and unblinking. Mila watched him with the kind of focus only small children and serious executives seem to possess. "What's your favorite thing about your mom?" he asked after a pause. Mila thought about it for a second. "She always finds a way," she said. "Like if we don't have money for dinner, she'll make pancakes out of flour and water, or if my shoes have holes, she puts tape inside so I don't feel it." Graham nodded slowly. "She sounds clever." "She is," Mila replied proudly, "and she never complains, not even when she's tired." He turned back to the resume. It was well organized, clean, concise. Her GPA had been stellar, Dean's List, volunteer work, student leadership roles, then an abrupt stop. No degree, just a short sentence under education completed. Withdrew due to personal circumstances. That was where the gap began. From then on, the document listed an unbroken line of low-wage jobs: server, janitor, grocery delivery, front desk clerk. None lasted more than a year. Graham had seen hundreds of these resumes in his career, but this one felt different. Maybe because of the little girl now swinging her feet across from him, or maybe because of the note she had attached to the back page, written in faint blue ink. "I'm not looking for pity. I'm just asking for a real chance." He looked up. "Do you know what this company does, Mila?" She nodded. "You build solutions. That's what my mom said." "And do you think your mom can build solutions?" Mila smiled. "She builds everything. One time our toaster broke and she fixed it with a spoon and a shoelace." Graham let out a breath, something almost like a laugh. He looked down again, then closed the folder gently. "You're very brave, Mila, coming all this way by yourself. Do you know how special that is?" Mila nodded again. "Mama says being scared is okay, but not trying is worse." "She's right," he said softly. He stood adjusting his cufflinks. "Can you wait here for a moment?" "Will I get in trouble?" she asked, eyes wide. "No," he assured her. "You're not in trouble at all." He stepped out into the hallway, pressing the intercom by Paige's desk. "I need the name of the hospital Emma Collins was admitted to yesterday," he said, "and send flowers. Something light, natural, not grand, and a small gift, something for a little girl." "Yes, sir," Paige replied, still sounding dazed. "Anything else?" "Yes. Once you confirm her location, ask if she would be available for a formal interview once she's recovered. Tell them I'll wait." Back inside, Mila had climbed off the chair and was standing by the window, nose nearly touching the glass, looking down at the rushing world below. "The cars look like toys," she said when Graham returned. "Everything does from up here." "It's funny," he said, joining her. "Sometimes I forget what it looks like down there." Mila looked up. "You should come down more often." He smiled. "I think you're right." When Paige came in with a juice box and a small bag of trail mix, Mila beamed. "Thank you," she said politely, then turned to Graham. "Can I take this to Mama?" "Of course," he said, "but only if you let me walk you back to the hospital." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. Even though you're the boss?" "Even more so," he said. "Being the boss means I get to decide what matters, and this matters." The hospital room was quiet when they returned. Emma stirred when she heard the door, assuming it was a nurse. But when she opened her eyes and saw Mila holding a juice box and a folder, and Graham Weston, the CEO himself, standing behind her, her entire body stiffened. "I'm so sorry," she said, struggling to sit upright. I didn't know she didn't." Graham held up a hand. "Ms. Collins, please, No apologies necessary. Your daughter is exceptional. And so are you. Emma blinked, confused. You're not angry? Angry? He said. She conducted one of the most memorable interviews I've ever been part of, and she didn't even need PowerPoint. Emma didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But she's 4, she whispered. Exactly, Graham said, offering a small smile, which tells me everything I need to know about the kind of resilience she's learned to model. He stepped forward, placed the folder gently on her lap. I'd like to reschedule your interview, formally, when you're feeling better. No rush. She stared at him, dumbfounded. You're serious? Deadly. He paused. Take the time you need, and when you're ready, we'll talk again. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of each other. Emma pressed a hand to her heart. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know what this means to us. I think I'm starting to, he said, glancing at Mila, who was now sitting on the hospital chair, swinging her legs again, content. He turned to go, then stopped. By the way, he added over his shoulder, she mentioned something about ice cream Saturdays. Let's make sure that stays in the budget. Then he was gone. Days passed. Emma recovered slowly but surely. The fever subsided, her strength returned, and 2 weeks later, she stepped off a city bus in front of Weston Dynamics, her hands shaken but her shoulders squared. Her outfit wasn't perfect, just a clean blouse and skirt, but her eyes were clear, her hair neat, and her heart determined. Paige met her in the lobby with a warm smile. Welcome back, Ms. Collins. He's expecting you. The walk to the elevator felt longer this time, heavier with expectation. When she entered Graham's office, he rose and smiled, not the polished smile of a CEO, but something far more human. Emma, he said simply, glad to see you. Thank you for giving me another chance, she replied, clutching her bag. You earned it, he said. Now let's talk about what comes next. As she sat across from him, for the first time in a long time, Emma Collins felt not like a statistic or a struggling mother or a regret, but like a woman finally standing in the light of the life she once thought she had lost. The early mornings at Weston Dynamics became something Emma came to cherish. She would arrive before most, long before the building buzzed to life with the usual symphony of elevator dings and clipped footsteps. Those quiet minutes alone in the break room with a cup of stale coffee and the sound of the city just beginning outside the tall windows gave her time to steady herself, to remember who she was becoming. Not the scared girl who dropped out of school with a baby, not the waitress with aching feet and $2 in her pocket. She was now Emma Collins, junior project assistant at one of the most respected solution firms in Philadelphia. Some days, even saying that in her mind felt like pretending. But most days, it felt like healing. On her first official day, her desk was located at the far end of the 12th floor, next to the printer that wheezed like an asthmatic elephant and a window that didn't quite close all the way. Still, she had a desk with her name on a small silver plaque. That alone made her want to cry. Her first week was a blur of login, onboarding videos, compliance documents, and names she couldn't remember. She took notes in a notebook she'd borrowed from Mila, the one with glittery unicorns on the cover. When someone scoffed at it in the hallway, Emma didn't even blink. She had endured louder laughter than that. Her team was polite, though distant. People said hello, but few said more. She noticed the glances at her modest clothes, At the scuffed shoes she had scrubbed clean that morning. At the lunch she packed in an old sandwich bag. She noticed when she walked into the break room and conversation stopped. She noticed, but she didn't break. She came in early, left late, double-checked every email before hitting send. She asked questions, volunteered for grunt tasks, and made detailed notes during meetings. She learned the formatting quirks of Graham's reports, the preferred slide styles of every project manager, the coffee orders of every executive assistant. And slowly, subtly, the tone shifted. The first time someone said, "Emma, can you take a look at this deck?" She nodded so calmly you'd never guess her heart flipped. The second time someone said thanks and actually meant it, she had to step into the bathroom to catch her breath. One by one, tiny threads began to stitch her into the fabric of the team. But no one, not once, questioned why she was there. Because Graham Weston didn't treat her like a favor or a charity hire. He treated her like an asset. He didn't hover. He didn't micromanage. But he watched. When her name came up in status meetings, he asked for her input. When her spreadsheet caught a budgeting error no one else noticed, he sent a brief email. Well spotted. And when Mila came down with a fever one Thursday morning, Emma called to say she'd be in late. His reply was instant. Family first. Take the time you need. There were other moments, small ones. The day Emma skipped lunch and returned to find a sandwich quietly waiting on her desk with a note. Extras from the boardroom. Enjoy. The time he subtly moved her seat closer to the front during a major strategy session. The fact that every time she spoke in meetings, he listened, really listened, and sometimes echoed her point in a way that made others stop and pay attention. But it wasn't just Graham's attention she had earned. She was earning her own confidence back. Emma began to trust her instincts again. To see herself not just as someone lucky to be here, but someone who belonged here. Mila started coming to the office on Friday afternoons. Emma was nervous at first, but Graham insisted. "We've had dogs and interns worse behaved," he joked. Mila would sit on the corner couch in his office, coloring with markers and humming quietly. She called him Boss Man when she wanted his attention, and he'd always look up no matter what he was doing. Sometimes he canceled his final meeting of the day just to take her out for milkshakes. They had their routines. She saved him the last cookie at company picnics. He kept crayons in a drawer labeled Mila's Art Supplies. Emma watched it all with a heart that swelled and trembled at the same time. She had buried her wants for so long that the presence of something kind, stable, even joyful felt dangerous, like she might wake up and find it gone. One evening, long after the sun had set and most of the office had emptied, Emma was still at her desk, putting final edits on a presentation due the next morning. The floor was dim, bathed in the soft glow of city lights outside. Her fingers ached, her eyes burned, but there was a lightness in her chest that hadn't been there in years. Fulfillment. She didn't notice Graham approach until he spoke. "You work harder than most of the people I've had here for a decade." She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Guess I have a decade to catch up on." He nodded toward the chair beside her desk. "May I?" She motioned to it. For a few moments they sat in companionable silence. Then she spoke softly. "I never thought I'd end up in a place like this." He turned slightly. "Why not?" She hesitated. "I was in college," she said. "Marketing major. I loved it. Had internships lined up. Plans. Then I met someone. Thought he was everything. Got pregnant my freshman year." Graham's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. "I thought we'd figure it out together," she continued. But he disappeared. My parents said I embarrassed them, told me to give up the baby or leave. Her voice broke a little. So I left. And you raised Mila on your own? Yeah, she said. I chose her, and lost everything else. She looked down at her hands. The degree, the career, the life I planned. But I'd do it again, 100 times. Graham was quiet for a long moment. Then he placed his hand gently over hers. I was left too, he said. She looked at him, surprised. I was 10. My parents died in a car accident. No siblings, no relatives who wanted me. I moved through houses like passing seasons. I built this company because I thought success could protect me. That control meant safety. He paused. But I never had what you have. What's that? She asked quietly. Courage, he said. You chose love, even when it cost you everything. Her eyes welled with tears. I used to think I was weak. You're anything but, he said. They sat in silence again. Two people who had survived different storms, now finding shelter in the same quiet space. The following weeks melted into a rhythm. Emma's name appeared more frequently in team debriefs. Colleagues came to her first with logistical questions. Clients began asking for her by name. She wasn't the assistant anymore. She was becoming the anchor. Mila, too, became a fixture. She had her own chair in the break room, a rotating collection of markers, and a fan club that included everyone from interns to executives. She once opened a quarterly meeting with a cheerful "Good morning, team," and no one forgot it. But it was in Graham's office where the most subtle shift happened. Every Friday, Mila would settle onto the couch with her juice box. Graham would glance up from his laptop and smile. Sometimes he let her doodle on whiteboards. Sometimes he read her books while waiting for a call. And sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd glance across his desk at Emma with an expression that wasn't professional at all. It was gentle, familiar, fond. One Friday evening, the three of them stayed late. Mila colored in the corner. Emma and Graham reviewed the final notes for a Monday launch. Laughter filled the room, the kind that doesn't need explanation, just shared history. When the last slide was saved, Emma stretched. She's tired, she said, glancing at Mila, who had begun yawning behind her markers. Graham stood. Let's carry her down. Emma bent to gather Mila's bag. That's when it happened. Mila's small voice, curious and drowsy, asked, Mommy, can I call Boss Man Daddy? The world stopped. Emma froze. The bag slipped a little from her fingers. Graham didn't move. Mila, ever unaware of how seismic her words were, continued softly, because he always brings me ice cream, and reads to me, and makes you smile. Emma turned slowly, tears in her eyes. She met Graham's gaze, expecting awkwardness, shock, maybe retreat, but he was already walking toward them. He crouched beside Mila, looked at her, then at Emma. I would be honored, he said. Emma broke. Her heart, the one she had braced for years, cracked wide open. Not from fear or pity, but from something so powerful it overwhelmed her. Belonging. In that moment, it was no longer about resumes or interviews or second chances. It was about something more sacred, a family. One built not by accident or blood, but by choice, trust, and a pink dress that once walked bravely into the unknown. The annual Winter Gala at Weston Dynamics shimmered with a kind of elegance that only corporate wealth could afford. Crystal chandeliers cast soft gold light across the grand ballroom, while velvet-covered tables lined the floor beneath garlands of pine and twinkling fairy lights. Waiters in black ties glided between guests carrying silver trays, the hum of laughter and string music blending into a luxurious warmth that wrapped around the evening like a silk scarf. But in the far corner near the 12-foot Christmas tree, it wasn't the decor that held the room's attention. It was the woman in the deep navy gown, her hair swept into a soft twist, her poise quiet yet radiant. Emma Collins stood beneath the soft twinkle of fairy lights, a glass of sparkling cider in one hand and her daughter twirling beside her in a white dress with silver shoes. Mila laughed as she spun, her tiny crown of braided hair bouncing with each movement, a vision of joy so pure it almost didn't seem real. And just a few feet away, Graham Weston watched them both with a stillness that said everything. He wore a tailored black tuxedo that made him look every bit the powerful CEO he was, but his expression was not one of strategy or calculation. It was something far softer, something truer. He had once stood at events like this, stiff with formality, smiling only for shareholders, but tonight his gaze never strayed far from the woman who had rewritten everything he thought he knew about success, and the little girl who had started it all with a pink dress and a folder. For a time, no one dared approach them. There was something magnetic about the trio, something that made people pause and wonder how such a quiet story had grown so big without anyone noticing. And then came the sound. The tap of a spoon against a champagne glass. The room fell into hush. Graham stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room, one hand in his pocket, the other resting gently on the podium. His voice was calm, steady, amplified not just by the mic, but by something deeper. "Usually, at this event, we talk numbers," he began, glancing around the crowd. "Growth, goals, milestones, and we've had plenty this year." Polite laughter rippled through the room. He smiled slightly. "But tonight, I want to talk about something else, something that changed this company and me more than any quarterly report ever could." His eyes found Emma and Mila. "1 year ago, I received a job application unlike any other. It was delivered by someone about 3 feet tall, wearing a pink dress and holding a resume twice her size." The crowd laughed warmly. Emma brought a hand to her mouth. Mila's eyes widened with excitement. "She walked into our lobby," Graham continued, "and asked for an interview. Not for herself, but for her mother. She didn't have credentials or experience. What she had was honesty, courage, and love." He paused. "That child reminded me that greatness doesn't always walk through our doors with a polished pitch and a portfolio. Sometimes it arrives quietly, bravely, wrapped in second-hand shoes and holding on to hope with both hands." The room had gone completely still. Not a whisper, not a fork clinked. "That little girl changed my life," he said. "And her mother taught me what real strength looks like, what sacrifice means, and what kind of person I want to stand beside in this life." He stepped down from the podium and walked straight toward Emma and Mila. He didn't need music or ceremony. He simply extended his hand. Emma took it, trembling slightly. Mila grinned and grabbed his other one. The room erupted in applause. Not loud or thunderous, but long, full, and heartfelt. Later that night, the three of them sat on the rooftop garden above the ballroom. The city stretched below them in glowing rivers of light. Mila had fallen to sleep with her head on Graham's lap, her tiny fingers still clutching a half-eaten cookie. Emma leaned against him, her shoes kicked off, her body exhausted but light. "Do you ever think about how unlikely this is?" she whispered. "Every day," he murmured. "But I stopped believing in coincidence the day she walked into my office." Emma smiled, her eyes closed. "I thought I'd have to carry everything alone forever." "You don't have to anymore," he said simply. "Not ever again." Silence fell between them, soft and sure. Graham brushed a piece of hair from Emma's forehead, then looked out at the skyline. "I bought her that ice cream today," he added quietly. "Strawberry swirl, 2 scoops, whipped cream." "She probably told you it wasn't enough," Emma teased gently. He laughed. "She said it was the best day of her life." Emma's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not this time. "Mine, too," she whispered. 6 months later, Emma Collins was no longer just a story whispered in hallways. She was Project Director of Community Initiatives, a position Graham had created specifically after seeing her ideas during a late-night presentation review. She now led a team of 10, mentored junior hires, and had her own office overlooking the same city that once ignored her. Her name showed up on performance reports, in meetings and media features, but more than that, it was spoken with admiration, not because of where she came from, but because of how far she had chosen to go. And always nearby, just out of the spotlight, was Graham. He never made grand gestures. He didn't need to. Every morning, there was a sticky note on her desk with a single sentence. Sometimes it was a quote, sometimes it was a joke. Once it was a drawing of a unicorn with glasses that Mila had made, but every note ended the same way. "You belong here." On Fridays, Mila still came to the office. Her coloring supplies had expanded into a whole drawer. She now had her own laminated employee badge that said Junior VP of Ice Cream Acquisitions. People stopped by her corner couch just to say hi. She was the beating heart of a company once ruled by deadlines and logic. And Graham Weston, he had changed too. The man who once walked through his empire with measured silence now laughed more, took more breaks, left the office early sometimes just to catch Mila's school play or take Emma out for street tacos. He still wore suits, still made deals, still closed contracts worth millions. But every time someone asked him about his greatest investment, he always gave the same answer: a pink dress and a resume I didn't expect. The wedding was small, private, just family and close friends. Emma wore a soft cream dress and walked down the aisle barefoot in a garden strung with fairy lights. Mila was the flower girl, but also the one who gave the speech. "My mommy used to cry when she thought no one saw," she said, standing proudly on a chair. "Now she laughs because someone stayed. Thank you, Daddy Graham, for seeing her and staying." No one had a dry eye, especially Graham. Later, when they danced beneath the stars, Grandma whispered, "You saved me too, you know." Emma looked up at him, eyes shining. "I didn't do anything." "You showed up," he said, "and you stayed." That night, in a home once quiet and cold, a little girl slept between 2 people who had found each other not by accident, but by choosing to believe in second chances. And that was how it all began, with a mother's resume, a child's courage, and a man who thought he had everything, until he realized he was missing the very thing that made life worth living: love. Real, enduring, ordinary, extraordinary love.